Hello, everyone. Welcome to Diversify Our Narrative BIPOC Authors interview. Today, we welcome the author of Pakistan for Women, Maliha Abidi. Maliha Abidi is originally from Karachi, Pakistan, and currently resides in the United Kingdom. She's a full-time medical neuroscience student at the University of Sussex and has been an artist all of her life.
Pakistan for Women is a book about 50 plus real stories of amazing women who belong to Pakistan and have achieved something extraordinary while making a difference. It consists of illustrations for each woman alongside their stories. It is a one-of-a-kind project, and such a book does not exist in Pakistan yet. It celebrates women from all walks of life and is designed to inspire girls and help them understand the importance of women empowerment and feminism through these stories. Maliha, we're very excited to have you today.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me, and it's so wonderful to meet you guys as well.
So let's start with the questions. What would you want the reader to take away from your book?
So it's a question with a lot of answers, and I think one of the things I really want to make obvious with the book is firstly the stories of these incredible women, because I think in every field there's a lack of women empowerment, and I think we sometimes get really maybe sometimes on purpose and sometimes unconsciously we really ignore women's achievements. And one of the main things that I really want to make sure that people understand is the stories and journeys of these women, and connecting that with where they come from. So Pakistan is seen as a third world country. Many people who don't know much about Pakistan may think of it as a country that's a desert or a war zone or a village. While we have beautiful villages and deserts, we also have big cities, and I will not just sit here and just kind of say, oh yeah, Pakistan is perfect and doesn't have problems, and if there's anything negative out there, that's not true. Because Pakistan has its problems. So I'm not just gonna sit here and say, okay, yeah, Pakistan is perfect, because that's being in denial. And if I have that approach, then I cannot contribute towards making a difference in a positive way. But at the same time, Pakistan has incredible stories, such as stories of these women, and actually these women are the ones who are taking initiative and making a positive difference. So firstly, we cannot ignore their achievements, and secondly, we need to give them the credit, the recognition, and understand that if you it goes hand in hand. If you think Pakistan is a third world country, it's poor, and if they're able to achieve all of this in a country where you think there are not a lot of resources, then I don't think anybody else I think it's a big source of inspiration. So I think that's one of the main things that I would really want the readers or anyone looking at the project, I really would like them to understand that about the project.
Yeah, speaking of inspiration, what events from your life inspired or influenced you in creating Pakistan for Women?
Firstly, I've always created a series of portraits for different stories. Sometimes I was inspired by a certain culture, or I was inspired by something common between some stories, and I created a series of I would say 5 to 10 illustrations. And one day I was sitting in a bookstore and I was just thinking, what should I do next with my art? And this was about 2.5 years ago, and I thought that maybe I should do a series about Pakistani, like an extensive series about Pakistani women. I did draw Pakistani women even before that, but I just thought that this time I'm gonna create portraits of 25 women. And then I took out my notebook, and in the notebook I started writing potential women that I would like to add in that portrait series. And at that time my thinking was really limited, because I was thinking, okay, I'm just gonna upload it on my Instagram and Facebook as usual and move on to the next project. But when I started writing the names, quickly that list became of 80 women without me even searching properly online or in the books or anywhere, without even doing proper research. Just on the top of my head, I knew so many incredible stories from my country that instead of 25, that list was of 80 women right away. So I decided that I cannot just do a project that's only a one-time project and then I can forget about it. Or move on from it. So that's where the initial idea of Pakistan for Women came about. And even with my Instagram, I always used to write like really long captions. I still do, which kind of give a background of the art piece or whoever I'm drawing. So that's how I combined the portrait with the story and thought that I should create a book. And I actually didn't know who's gonna read it, but I just had this vision of a little girl reading the book, because in my culture, sometimes in some families in Pakistan, without thinking much or without being very sensitive towards someone's ambitions or goals, people very easily say, oh, you're a girl, you cannot do that, girls don't do that, or we don't have enough resources. If a family only has resources to send one kid, it's usually going to be the boy. And if we go a step further, and if a family can afford education, and let's say they want you to get a good education, for the girls, the motivation can be a bit flawed, because I've seen people say to their daughters that, okay, you should become a doctor so that you can get good marriage proposals, rather than saying you should become a doctor so that you can be a woman in science, or without even asking, are you even interested in science, or so do you want to pursue it, or it's a great profession, you'll be able to help people, save lives. None of that. It's so that you can get a good proposal. And it's such a big problem in Pakistan, being a doctor bride, where so many women who graduate, they get married and they're not allowed to practice. So if you're looking at families who are facing poverty, then they have limited resources, or you're looking at a middle class family, or so there are different kinds of problems. So I didn't know who's going to read this book, but I really wanted to put stories out there and say, let them pursue whatever they want. If they want to be a firefighter, if they want to be a mountaineer, if they want to be a footballer, if they want to be an educator, because all of these women from Pakistan have done something incredible in their own field, and they have achieved something amazing. And so you don't have to fear that your daughters will not have a future, or their future is only to marry well. So these things, they were all kind of tangled thoughts in my head that kept me motivated to complete this project. I used to have classes in the morning, and then I used to be pulling all-nighters, and yeah, so that's what there wasn't just one thing that inspired me. There were a lot of things that went into my entire process in creating the book.
So going off what you said about combining your art to then write and uplift these stories by Pakistani women, what drew you to art and writing in the first place, if you can go all the way back in time? And how would you say that art and literature have affected your life?
Yeah, so I have been creating art for as long as I can remember. And my father, even though he's an engineer, but just growing up, I always heard from my family, my relatives, that your father was such a great artist. He used to draw and paint, and even sometimes, like me and my dad, we used to just work on a drawing. And so I really look up to him, and I became a coffee addict at like the age of 17, just because I saw him drinking coffee, and he was a grown man drinking coffee, but then I started copying him and drinking coffee a lot. And then I became by the time I was 18, I was like, where's my cup of coffee? Like, what? So, I wanted to be like him, and I looked up to him, and he was less of a typical father figure, more of a friend. So I just, I just wanted to work on my art, be more like my father, but also like my grandfather. He was, he used to write poetry in his diary, and write letters all the way to India, because like he was born before the partition, of India, Pakistan. So then my family, like my grandparents, came to Pakistan, but he still used to write letters to his friends in India, and and in that letter they used to like poetries and stuff. So that was supposed to be like a gift or a special kind of touch. So and my family in general, they just love, they appreciate art and they love it. So I think, at least when I was younger, nobody kind of said, okay, art is a waste of time, or like don't create art, and things like that. But with writing was very personal. Like I've always kept a diary. Never completed on the diary, but I just had one always, and just used to write my deepest thoughts in them. And it's something super personal. It's never something that I openly shared with people until like very recently. And yeah, basically that's my kind of story of my love for art and literature. And I think I'm missing the end part of your question, so if you can please repeat that, then I can answer it better if I didn't answer it already.
Sure. I think you kind of touched on this, but how art and literature affected your life, like past childhood, I suppose, as well?
Oh, it impacted my life in a very big way. So when I was little, it was just supposed to be for fun. Like I said, I wanted to be more like my father. I was never really discouraged. But by the time I was 14 and I left Pakistan and I immigrated to California, art was literally like what saved my mental health, because I was so isolated over, at least that's how I saw it. If someone else heard that I went to California from Pakistan, they were like, oh, what an upgrade. But only I knew how I felt in my mind. And I just felt this sense of isolation and just feeling homesick. And I think I was in, it just became super serious for me at the age of 14. I used to go to the library, and just sitting in the corner of the library, I used to draw and just cry and just try to cope with it. And then one day the librarian saw me drawing and she asked me if I wanted to volunteer as an art teacher. So I started doing that, and that's how I kind of interacted with the community over there. And so art kind of became my guardian to build more relationships or new connections in a new place. But yeah, it really kept me. It was like a good escape. It was a healthy escape for me at 14, when I actually didn't know even how to voice my my problems or the things that I was feeling. So yeah.
Yeah, you talk about, like struggles with isolation in California, and also about like pulling all-nighters when you were in university. So can you tell me a little bit more about the struggles or obstacles you faced when it comes to writing, publishing, advertising Pakistan for Women?
Yeah, so towards the end of the project, I was, I think, I would say 95% done with all the illustrations and the writing, and I was like, oh, okay, so I'm almost done. What should I do next? And it was staring me in the face, publishing, like actually printing the book. And I was like, oh, I'm a broke student. Like, how am I supposed to, get the money to print it? And in that time, even the art supplies that I used to create the portraits, I was working at an art store over the weekends, and on the weekdays I had my work. I had my classes, and on the weekends I was working at an art store so that I can pay for the art supplies that I'm using. Because even though there are 50 portraits, I probably drew around 120 portraits because some of them I just didn't like. I just didn't think they did justice to the story that I was trying to tell. So there was a lot of revisions with my work. So when it came time for publishing and printing, I decided to kind of think like how I can, because I was so eager to put this project out there. I wanted to just get the money somehow and just put it out there. So I decided to do a Kickstarter campaign, and I posted it on Instagram. I sent it to everyone in my list. I posted it on Twitter, and then from there, people liked the project, which I'm very grateful for. Like I said before, I didn't know who's gonna read the book. I just envisioned a little girl with a lot of dreams who needs a little inspiration. But a lot of people, not just Pakistanis, but people from other countries, they liked the book, and there were media platforms that wanted to reach out and interview me for so that I can tell a bit more about the stories in the book. So there was Good Morning America, there was BBC, Now This News, and so I'm just really grateful for that kind of response just when I just announced the book and I just announced the Kickstarter campaign. So the campaign was a success, and I was able to print the book, send them to the backers, but also like to other people. And now the book has been shipped to over 40 countries. And the marketing bit, I would say that the marketing bit was basically posting it on all of my social media accounts. Some people were like, oh yeah, you have a certain number of followers, that's why probably your Kickstarter campaign was a success. But that's not true, because my Kickstarter campaign got a lot of attention from my Twitter, and on my Twitter I had very, very, very less than 800 people. And those 800 people, if anybody knows Twitter is like, you can have 10,000 people on it and only like one like on Twitter, because it's weird, the algorithm is weird on Twitter. So Twitter was where like I was getting a lot of the traffic for Kickstarter for. So don't think that if you have a big platform or if you have a certain number, only then you should create a crowdfunding campaign to make your project a reality. You never know. That's the thing. You never know how things are going to turn out. And yeah, the marketing bit was just sending it to every single person. Just being that annoying person that's sending links to, to every single person in your circle. And yeah, that was pretty much the messy process of printing Pakistan for Women.
When you say that you envision a young girl reading your story, what advice would you give that young, aspiring, girl and other young girls across the world? Like, what advice would you give them about writing books and creating art for the world to start amplifying their own voices?
Yeah, so I think we sometimes underestimate girls in general, whether they're young little, teenagers, grown women, it doesn't really matter. But I think the advice I would give them is that you're gonna have a lot of people who are gonna be doubting you, who are gonna be telling you all kinds of things, and on different stages of your life as well. So and I cannot kind of tell them what exactly those things will be, but I can tell them the theme of it. The theme will be that those will be people who don't know anything about you and they just wanna place their doubts on you. And also maybe those are the people who have no expertise in the field that you're trying to pursue, and they just want to have that, they just want to demand the respect to, they just feel entitled that their opinions should be taken into consideration. And I would just tell them that it's okay whatever dream you have, it's okay. And you don't let anybody don't let anybody make you doubt yourself, kind of. I know it sounds like a cliche, but like I said, I cannot exactly kind of say what sentences you will come across. Maybe the doubts will be about your career choice. Maybe the doubts will be about you not wanting to get married, or wanting to get married, or not wanting to have a child, or starting your business. It could be so many things. Because like I said, women are challenged on different stages of their life, whether they are little young girls or whether they are teenagers. Or so I would just say be confident. I know it's not always easy, but at least just ignore what they're saying, because even they don't know what they're talking about. They just want to feel, they just feel entitled, and they just want to, like, for example, when I was a teenager, there was this Daisy uncle who was like, you will never be successful because basically he was indirectly saying, because you're not listening to my career advice. And it's been 5 years since then. I still remember this sentence. And the other day he was like, oh yeah, so how many books have you sold? So like how many, like in a kind of trying to get cozy kind of a way. So yeah, people will doubt you on everything without even knowing anything about your journey, just to feel important or feel like they know something.
Yeah, for sure. And, you've published this wonderful book that documents, the wonderful life and works of 50 plus Pakistan women. Do you have any other upcoming projects, art pieces, anything in mind that you want to share with us?
Yeah, so I just finished my classes for the summer, and I'm just constantly working in my art studio. And right now I'm finishing up my second book, which is about 100 women of color from around the world. So they are from 30 different countries. And so initially it was just about, the book was about just Pakistan, but then with this book, I'm talking about women from Pakistan, United States, India, so many Middle Eastern countries, so many African countries, different European countries. So, just bringing Black, Indigenous, and other women of color in one book, and telling their stories. And as I'm reading their stories as well, like right now my project is like towards just finishing touches. But it was just an incredible journey just to be able to create that kind of a book, which is a much bigger project than Pakistan for Women, but I would say just as important and very close to my heart, because we need intersectionality, and we need stories from, like, we cannot just talk about women of color from one country, because like we said, like, there are different resources around the world. There are different doubts placed on women around the world in different cultures. There's so many different beliefs out there. And limitations on women. So we need to understand stories from across the world. Other than that, I'm working on a project about refugees, because that's another project that's close to my heart, but it's very difficult for me to talk about it, because I think with women empowerment, my anthem is kind of just like stay strong, and just, if you're reading about a difficult story, just it's okay, she's a strong woman, like, get inspiration from the stories and stuff. But with refugees, or if I'm reading a story about the refugees, it's so difficult. It's like emotionally really difficult. And I will be visiting some refugee camps as well, and just trying to understand their journey better. So that would be a different kind of journey, but yeah, I'm looking forward to understanding it better.
So what are some themes and messages you'd like to emphasize for educators when they teach your books to young people across the world?
Themes, I would say culture. Culture is something, because I think we kind of put people in one category, even if we're talking about people of people of color, or um, I think we just kind of like talking about just people of color in the United States or the culture in the United States. I think that's not enough, because we need to talk about the immigrant experience, the refugee experience, the first generation experience, the second generation experience. So we cannot we need to really pay attention to the culture, because breaking let's say a toxic practice or culture, it can take several generations. So even if you're interacting with the second generation, they can still be going through a trauma that was felt by their ancestors. Or so if you have a student that's a fresh immigrant, their understanding of where they are would be completely different. So they would be learning about things that they have never heard of. Like, I had no idea who Rosa Parks was until I came to the United States, and I went to a good school. I would say I had a good education in Pakistan, but still I had no idea who Rosa Parks was, and so many women and men like her. So I think they would be like, that student would be dealing with new information, new things. So I think be really tolerant and kind of keep this in your mind, that they come from a different culture, but not just as a plain statement that, oh yeah, everybody is different and they come from a different background. I think go in depth and try to kind of understand and educate yourself on what kind of cultural beliefs, or that positive and negative, that they kind of come from. I think that's somewhere where people misunderstand each other, and because of the lack of understanding of one's culture, and just the lack of intersectionality as well, not being able to understand how how we can balance things and have more an inclusive environment. So I think these terms are quite vague, but I don't exactly I think just being more tolerant, kind of trying to educate yourself as we're going forward as well. And yeah, I think that's my 2 cents on this.
Yeah, as we wrap up this interview, is there anything else, any final messages you want to, add or include to our audience?
Lately, I've been really thinking about how different people in different stages of my life have kind of challenged me and kind of said that I will never do this or that, even though I wasn't really a quiet person that they could kind of feel that they can say anything to, but they still felt the need to say such things. So I just feel that if you're doing anything that's out of the ordinary, you are gonna most probably come across those people as well. For me, it was my art, and it didn't happen when I was younger, because nobody discouraged me when I was young, when I was a baby or I was little. But I think because they saw it as I don't know, something not serious, something as a playtime thing kind of. But as I was growing older, they started seeing my hobbies, my passion as my hobbies, or something that I shouldn't really give a lot of time to, even though that's my biggest, one of the biggest parts of my identity. So if you're doing anything out of the ordinary, most probably you're gonna come across those people. But the most important thing is to understand that, to have that conversation with yourself, that this is what you want, you're sure about this, and whatever anybody else says, it shouldn't really matter to you, because if you decide to hear every single person in your way, you're really never going to get anywhere. You're going to be busy answering and talking to all of these toxic, unnecessary people. So, and at the same time, just keep working on whatever projects, whatever goals you have, because the craziest ideas, that's how they became a reality, and become a part of our reality, everyday life as well. So yeah, I think that's what I want to say.
Thank you so much to author Maliha Abidi for sharing her experiences and background with us today. Her book, Pakistan for Women, is available on her website, malihaabidi.com. Thank you so much for joining us today, Maliha.
Thank you so much, Karen and Judy. Thank you so much for having me, and it was such a wonderful conversation. Thank you.